Welcome to part 4 of 100 objects that tell the history and philosophy of Summerhill School. This object is my staff peg. So I'm going to tell a few stories about this. First of all, it's a staff peg, so I made this, and as you can see, it's the hand of Frankenstein's creature holding a book, and the book says, "It lives." And then it's got my name, Mike, and a little snail. So that's the peg. Now, everyone in Summerhill has to make a peg, and it's part of the registration system. You put it on a pegboard, which is a big public board, and on that board it has whether you are in the school, outside the school, or far out. Now, far out means that you're visiting parents, or you're away from the town, visiting London or something. And out simply means that you've gone for a walk or bike ride downtown. Now, this has got several stories. First of all, the staff didn't have a pegboard for some time, for several years after the children had theirs. The children had a pegboard from the early 1990s, but the staff didn't have a pegboard when I first arrived as a new member of staff. And when I first arrived, there were sort of two groups of staff. There was a really good group who'd been there for several years, and they were the group that Zoe Redhead, the then principal, was trying to change the school so that the staff were encouraged to stay and to have loyalty to the school through having better accommodation, better working conditions, and more support. And she created this lovely group of staff. Now, I was one of the new members of the staff, and the other new members of staff had been there for less than 2 years. Now, as new members of staff and as teachers, we tended to stay at the school in the evenings. Part of life at the school is that you live there, that you sleep there, and you have specific days off. So you can only have 3 weekends off, or at the time I think it was 2 weekends when I arrived, during the term, that you could go away to London or to your boyfriends or girlfriends, and then the rest of the time you had to be there at the school. And of course, teachers could go out in the evenings or when they weren't teaching. Now, at the time, there was no pegboard, so no one really knew which staff were in or out. So me and I think it was the English teacher at the time, we went down in the evening to the pub. And this was the pub called the White Horse, which became famous in some ways if you've read The Last Man Alive, or I think in Germany it's called The Yellow Cloud or Green Cloud. And that's a story that Neill wrote, and in it the White Horse is portrayed as Neill's favourite pub, and the children, because everyone else in the world has died apart from some of the children and Neill, the children blow up the pub, the White Horse, so that Neill can't get access to all the alcohol there. Now, so we went down to the White Horse, and we went into the bar at the front, and there was the staff. There were the house parents, the teachers, and even the husband of Zoe, Tony. They were all there, and the house parents who were there, whose responsibility was to look after the health and welfare of the children, though that was all our responsibilities. They looked round and they counted, and they realised all the staff were at the pub in that bar. So they ran back to the school to ensure that it had only been a few minutes where there were probably no adults at the school. And this was one of the things that led to the staff having their own pegboard. And the pegboard was put outside the staff room, and my first peg was actually a snail, because of my geography teacher at my boys' grammar school saying I had the brain of a snail slowly moving up a wall. And I thought, well, the snail gets there, doesn't it? It gets to the top of the wall. So I took it as a nickname. But this is not a snail. It has a snail on it. This is the creature from Frankenstein. Now, why did I put this as a peg? Because each member of staff and each child, they would make the peg as the first thing that they do in the workshop when they first arrive at the school, so that they can then use the pegboard as their register. And they'd all have different reasons for making whatever they make. Now, I did the Frankenstein monster, or creature, it's not a monster, because of what I've read about Mary Shelley and Mary Shelley's parents. Mary Shelley's parents were William Godwin, who was an incredibly important anarchist, and he wrote a book concerning political justice, and then the following year one of the first detective novels called Caleb Williams. Now that's William Godwin for you. And now he married Mary Wollstonecraft, and of course Mary Wollstonecraft wrote The Rights of Woman, and was in Paris just after the French Revolution or during it. She was a very, very important feminist. Now, Mary Shelley, actually, to me, Frankenstein, the book, is not about sort of horror or science fiction. It's more about a human being who is not created by God, important thing, so it's a secular human being, who has no right to a name, no right to a family, no right to schooling, no right to food, no right to shelter, no right to protection. Yeah? If you think about it, it's every single absence of right. And what happens then to this poor creature? Yeah? The creature is dehumanized and destroyed by those around him because he is not given any rights. He's not given the foundation to help him create and build his own humanity. So to me, Frankenstein is a story about children's rights. Yeah? And I use it within primary schools, into Hamlets, within an assembly, to start getting the children to think about rights and their lives. Because one of the problems with children's rights and the way it's portrayed in schools sometimes is, one, if you have a right, you must have a responsibility. So if you have a right to learn, you take up the responsibility to be quiet in class and well behaved, which I hate that kind of contractual thing, which I think is a misunderstanding of rights. And secondly, you have the rights of the other. The rights of the starving child, the rights of the homeless child, the rights of, and it's always the rights of a child other than the children you're teaching. Yeah, whereas rights is about us. It's about you, me, and and I, in terms of the child in front of me. It's about them. Okay. Now, one of the things about New Ideals and about schools like Summerhill is that the history is fascinating, because to me one of the forerunners really is Robert Owen's school in New Lanark. Now, Robert Owen was a successful cotton industrialist, and at New Lanark, which was you could consider as a village created around water-powered cotton mills, there were lots of children, and he created, some of them were orphans and they were used as workers within the cotton industry. Richard Owen created a school for, created a school for them in 1817, and his belief was that schools should be about enjoyment and the children learning from each other and through questioning and exploration. And one of the things he said was that I don't want to employ teachers, trained teachers. What I want to do is employ men and women who love children. And one of the most important parts of the school was the playground, and also in terms of the creature and things, was that Robert Owen thought that geography should be taught, and that the main point of geography would be that the children would realise that they would have become Muslims, or they would have become Jews, or they would have become Catholics, or they would have become Protestants, or they would become Hindus, depending on where they were born. And if they realised this, then they realised that they hadn't chosen their culture, they hadn't chosen their religion, and that this would create a mindset, a framework of mind that would allow the children to realise, well, I can make decisions about these things. I can start trying to make decisions about who I am, and not just accept the values that I've been brought up with. And he thought that would free and liberate the mind, and that would help to create a society that he envisaged, which was a society based on equality, rights and cooperation. So he saw the teaching of geography, and the way it was taught was very, very exploratory and creative, and the children teaching each other using huge maps and, if possible, images and pictures and models and things. Now, one of the things I like about Robert Owen as well is that he was a great fan of William Godwin and also Mary Wollstonecraft, because Mary Wollstonecraft's reputation had been destroyed because of a biography that her husband had written after her death. She was portrayed as basically as a prostitute, as someone who had had a child outside of wedlock, who was a sensuous, sexual woman. And at the time, that destroyed her reputation as an intellectual, as a writer. And even feminists after her weren't quoting her. But one person who did, whenever they could, was Robert Owen. Robert Owen saw Mary Wollstonecraft as one of the heroes of women's rights and of the rights of people. Now, why does Frankenstein to me and the creature represent anything to do with places like Summerhill? Well, to me, one is Summerhill's based on the idea, I think, of the child creating themselves. Yeah, and that's one thing that Neill continuously said, is how as an adult can I have the arrogance to say this children should be this kind of person, or this child should be a scientist, or this child. It's up to the child. And how can I be so arrogant as a teacher to believe that I have the right to say this child should be taught in this way, or this child should learn in this way? It's up to the child to discover and explore and develop themselves. Because at the time there were like several views of childhood. One of them was Neill's, but the other one was really about unfurling. Was that we are born with our inherited characters, our inherited skills, and that these unroll, and our job as teachers is not to interfere with that, but to support the growth and unfurling of the child. Now that's very different from Neill, in a sense. Neill, in a sense, sees it as a blank slate, and that we create ourselves as much as we can, given, as Robert Owen said, that we actually realise that we can do it. So this is my peg, and it's a peg based on a lot of ideas to do with the rights of the child and how we create our own humanity. Thank you.
To develop their ideas about making rights relevant, they want to find ways of helping the pupils understand the concept of the balancing of rights. Elaine and Craig have arranged for Michael Newman, an education project worker from the Humanities Education Centre in Tower Hamlets in East London, to come to their school to share his passion for teaching children rights. He starts with the right to separate.
What kind of things do we need to build a human being? Arms. Some hair? A brain, ears, great listening ears. Think about what do you need to help you be yourself. Emotion, excellent. You need food, nothing to grow. You need friends, excellent. You need your mum and dad, you need your family. Now this is a very, very sad story. There's a scientist making this superhuman being forgot all of these. And you might recognise who the creature is. Yes.